In today's episode, I'm going to talk about why people vote against their own self-interest by comparing two models of decision making: the consequences model and the identity model. According to James March, when people make choices, they rely on one of two models of decision making: the consequences model and the identity model. Here's James March.
It's surprising if you think, well, people ought to prefer alternatives that lead them to better consequences. But it's not surprising at all if you think, well, no, that's not how it happens. You say, what kind of a person am I? What does such a person do? And we know all kinds of examples where people pursue what they think is appropriate to their identity that lead them to bad consequences. The procedure does not start with asking what are the consequences. And much of our behavior clearly is of that form. I am a man, I do what a man does. Most men doing what a man does get into trouble from time to time.
In the consequences model, we compare costs and benefits and choose to maximize our utility. If you remember the story of the St. Lucia parrot, motivating the St. Lucians using this approach would have failed because there wasn't a strong cost-benefit case. By contrast, in the identity model, we ask ourselves, who am I? What kind of situation is this? What would someone like me do in this situation? There is no calculation of costs and benefits. The identity model explains the way most people vote and why so many vote against their own self-interest. It explains why an auto mechanic in Oklahoma would vote against a Democrat who would give him health insurance. It explains why a Silicon Valley millionaire would vote against a Republican who would cut her taxes. Identity doesn't just mean immutable traits like your racial, ethnic, or regional identity. It can also refer to the identities we adopt throughout our lives, like an identity as a parent, an identity as a devout believer in a particular faith, or an identity as a patriotic citizen. There are also professional identities. You aren't born a scientist, but if you pursue such a career, your professors and mentors will cultivate such an identity in you. As you grow this identity, it affects your decision making. Say, for example, that you are a professor teaching chemistry, and you receive a lucrative offer to consult for a pharmaceutical company. From the perspective of consequential decision making, you should accept the job as it would lead to a much increased salary. But from the perspective of identity decision making, it is not obvious what you should do. You'd wonder if there were strings attached and what subtle compromises you'd have to make working in industry. You would wonder, what would a scientist like me do in this situation? Change efforts that don't take into account a person's identity and how that affects their decision making are likely doomed to fail. Witness the clumsiness of always reaching for incentives to change people's behavior. So the question we need to answer in future episodes is this: how can you make your change a matter of identity rather than a matter of consequences? Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss an episode.